Havlicek steals it. Havlicek stole the ball. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
United to Amici. Amici powers in.
Won their 6th NBA championship.
Gibson, swing. This is gonna be a home run. Unbelievable! I don't believe what I just saw.
Hello, I'm Chris Fowler for SportsCentury. Martina Navratilova came to us as a teenage defector in 1975, and over the next 2 decades, we witnessed one of the most dramatic transformations in sports history. From chubby, lazy, and self-indulgent, she was sculpted into a model of physical strength, discipline, and dynamism. Navratilova may have seemed self-assured on the court, but there was a search for an identity going on inside her.
I'd never even heard of this woman, and she was a flashy left-hand player. Big forehand, big serve volley, terrible backhand. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, if she ever gets her act together, she is going to be tough. Sure enough, she got her act together.
Well, that's the point of the evening.
She wanted to show off. Martina's a show-off. I mean, she wants to show, this is what I can do with this body. This is what I can do with my mind.
Martina would walk out on the court and she would know that she was in such far superior condition that the other player just didn't stand a chance. I was used to call her Maserati when everybody else was just a respectable car out there. She was quick, she was very, very powerful.
No player that I ever saw before or after her went quite to the net with so much strength, so much speed, so much aggressiveness.
There was a jaw-dropping quality to her acrobatics that I'll never forget. When she was at the net volleying, she looked like God was pulling the strings.
Physically, she was so strong. She would get to balls that against other players would be a winner. And I think the one that mentally she was just so strong. Even if you won the first set against Martina, you knew that the match almost just started because she's going to want to win this match no matter what.
Neat and clean. She just carved people up. Hit the serve. Bingo. You know, with dispatch.
Her competitive focus devastated opponents. Displaying a powerful athleticism, Martina Navratilova pushed women's tennis beyond the perceived limits of gender.
She played more like a man in terms of how hard she hit the ball than anybody up till that date.
Players actually admired Martina for it, and Martina made other players better players because of it.
I think Martina started a new era in women's tennis by becoming really strong, and I think it made all the other women athletes start lifting weights, getting more into the physical side of the game.
All of a sudden you start seeing women's sports is not just the girl next door. It's the athlete whose veins show in her legs. I'd never seen a woman's veins showing in her legs.
When I was young, I paged through a magazine one time, and that had a picture of Martina's arm and her hand, and it was very muscular and very veiny. And at that point, it was frowned upon in a way, and it seemed very unusual.
People at the time really acted as though there was something a little off about her physically. You know, all those muscles didn't seem quite right.
I think people thought of her as a villain because physically she was so strong. There's Chrissy and Tracy Austin and Yvonne Goolagong, and then along comes Martina, you know, who's working out and who has veins popping out of her arms and who's really strong. People were taken aback, and I think people were intimidated by this, but she's a kitten.
I displayed my emotions on a silver platter to everyone, and sometimes I didn't know what was going on the inside, but the outside was very obvious.
Her heart was on her sleeve at all times. She cried when she wanted to cry and laughed when she wanted to laugh and got mad when she wanted to get mad.
She cared about every shot. She punished herself when she didn't execute.
It was good to see someone show their emotion on the court because we were sort of taught to, hold back and stuff like that. But Martina, she just let it all hang out.
What I saw was a lesser version of myself, with all due respect.
When she'd get a bad call, it would just, go all over her. How could anyone make a mistake?
The ball was out.
She used to scream and yell on the court. When she'd get beat, she'd blame it. One year at the Open, she blamed her defeat on getting some fever from a cat, getting a sickness from a cat. I mean, Martina, give me a break.
Hated or loved, admired or respected, Navratilova's play on and off the court stirred the emotions wherever she went.
She was the all-time diva of any athlete I've ever run into. Her entourage would fill a clown car. I mean, at the majors, she would bring masseuses and agents and managers and her mother and father and her lesbian lovers and their children. She had a woman that did nothing but walk her dog. And we had great fun writing about Martina.
I knew she was smart from hearing her talk in press conferences, but in private, her intellect, her curiosity for the world was beyond what I've heard from most athletes. This is a woman who, when she plays tennis in Australia, she can come back and talk about the architecture of Sydney, or rave about the Opera House. She can talk about politics.
And on a little different note, I'd like to give a word of advice to the Chicago Bear management. Whatever Walter Payton wants, you better give it to him.
I liked Martina as a person. There was never a question that she wouldn't answer. There was hardly ever an issue that she wouldn't face.
Martina Navratilova is the only woman athlete of great consequence and stature who has stood up and said, "This is who I am."
She's just a very soft type of person, and I think very few people know the real Martina.
Attention, if you receive
Saturday Showcase. Duke, NC State at noon Eastern, and North Carolina, Florida State at 2 on ESPN.
Born on October 18, 1956, Martina Navratilova was raised in a village outside Prague. Her parents, Jana and Mirek, divorced when she was 3. Jana soon remarried. Mirek, meanwhile, visited his daughter regularly until she was 7, when his visits stopped. 3 years later, Martina was told that her natural father had passed away. But it wasn't until she was well into adulthood that she learned the whole truth. He had committed suicide.
She was living in Dallas, and she was involved with a woman, and her parents were unhappy with the way her life was going. And then one of the parents said, you're going to grow up to be just like your father. And she said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, he was very emotional, and of course the way his life ended. And she said, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, he committed suicide. All she could do at the moment was get mad at her parents and say, well, I don't have that in my plans. That's not what I have in mind.
She didn't often refer, when I knew her, to her natural father, and the fact that she adopted Navratil's name at an early age, I think, spoke of her love for her parents.
Martina's mother and stepfather nurtured her love of sports. At 4, she was swinging a tennis racket.
Martina was an athlete that could have played any sport she had chosen and been the very best at it. She was that great an athlete.
She likes to practice everything, but tennis was very special for her.
The first thing she learned when she grew up was the volley. Most kids are way back on the baseline, and all Martina wanted to do was go forward. Advance, advance, attack, attack.
We got to see Wimbledon on TV, watching the champions, Margaret Court and Billie Jean King. Those two were winning a lot, and played the kind of game that I liked to emulate.
But Martina would go nowhere, do nothing, without permission from the Soviet-controlled Czechoslovakian state. No detail, no matter how small, escaped the paranoid eye of Big Brother.
Trainers and doctors and nurses and whatever would come into schools and would look out for the best athletes. They'd bring calipers in there and measure long muscles and short muscles, and to see who'd be good for hockey and who'd be good for tennis. They would have clubs and they would have private coaches for their best young players.
Martina was still a child when the government ordered her parents to share their home with another family. By 1968, the Czechs had tested Moscow's resolve, passing a series of political referenda intended to create a greater personal freedom.
Czechoslovakia was a place that was held up in the world's eyes as being under the thumb of the USSR. Anybody who could would have wanted to leave.
They could get radio stations in Germany and Austria. The Communist Party could not block them out from reality quite as well as it could in other parts of the Iron Curtain. So I think swirling around the Czechs as she grew up was this understanding of what's just beyond the wall. And I think she grew up wanting a taste of it.
The walls grew ever higher when the revolt known as Prague Spring was crushed by Soviet troops in 1968. In the fallout, the Czech growing spirit for freedom was all but killed.
Czech people thought they were going to have more freedom, and in a few months their hopes were dashed.
There were just holes everywhere from the treads, and it was just depressing to see that. You know, the countryside being ruined by these freaking tanks that came out of nowhere.
They were living in a police state, and if you were an eminent athlete, you want to compete internationally and measure yourself against world-class abilities, and that was very difficult to do out of Czechoslovakia.
The communists were sort of like a fisherman, and every now and then they'd reel him in, and you cast him out again and say, okay, you can go to Wimbledon if you behave.
The Czechoslovakian Tennis Federation would chaperone her. If she went to events, they'd be there. Wherever she went, there was someone with her, watching her, making sure that she did what they wanted her to do.
From the moment she stepped onto the professional tennis scene in 1973, it was clear the 16-year-old had a bright future. After reaching the French Open final 2 years later, she pleaded with the Czech authorities for permission to compete in the U.S. Open.
They were not going to let her out. They had disapproved her plans to travel and play the U.S. Open.
They said I was too Americanized and socialized too much with the American players. I talked to my father and I said, I think I want to stay there. And he said I was going to tell you the same thing. But if you do, don't come back no matter what I tell you on the phone, because, we may have a gun to our head when we talk to you on the phone, or they'll certainly be listening to what I tell you. He said, just go and don't come back and don't tell your mother.
My husband had some talk with her about it, but he didn't tell me anything about it.
Navratilova was eventually allowed to play in the U.S. Open. After losing to Chris Evert in the semifinals, she told immigration officials she wanted to stay in America.
The guy said, do not tell anybody anything, just go to your hotel room, don't say anything to anybody. This is all very secretive and we want to protect you. And I go to my hotel room, and at 7:30 in the morning, there's a phone call from Vera Sukova, who was with me on the trip. She says, why did you do it? I'm like, did what? She says, you defected. I'm like, how do you know? It was in the Washington Post that morning.
I was with her when she made the announcement that she was going to defect. She was happy in a way, sad in a way, scared in a way.
And you have never seen such a cacophony and people screaming and yelling, throwing sentences at her, and here she was answering in 2 languages.
Why did I decide to do this? Because I felt I didn't get enough opportunities to play as much tennis as I want under the Czech government. I had to ask every time if I can play this tournament, if I can play that tournament. I just felt that if I want to become #1, that I couldn't do it under the circumstances at home.
The idea of a defector seems very glamorous from a distance, but Martina may not have thought that was glamorous at the time. Thinking that somebody would come and jab her with a needle and carry her on a plane, there was reason for paranoia for anybody from the Soviet bloc.
Martina became a non-person in Czechoslovakia as it was then. Her results were not printed in the papers, and there was no mention of her. They were furious, of course.
Her whole life was based on this great will to win and to survive. Suddenly she'd gone from the gray of Czechoslovakia to this golden country of the United States, and she wanted a little bit of everything.
Hi, I'm
once you try the canless air system, you'll use it and love it. So what do you got to lose? Try the O2 Hurricane.
She had a hard time handling that freedom because she'd always had led a very structured and a little sheltered life under the government in Czechoslovakia. And she was just without a rudder when she first got here. She was literally a kid in a candy store because candy became a vice, ice cream became a vice.
When she first came around, I mean, Billie Jean King was still a very big presence in women's tennis, early 70s. You know, she was still dominating, and Chris Evert had already been around and was a very famous young player. And Martina shows up in this country and gets so overwhelmed by the riches of the United States, and she just packed it on.
When you had a sandwich here in Czechoslovakia, you had a thick piece of bread and a little bit of ham. And there you had a thin slice of bread and, you know, this much ham. So it was like, wow, I was in hog heaven.
She was an impulsive woman in her late teens who had just gotten a taste of money and fun and food and jewelry and cars and clothing.
She had this one-piece bathing suit on, the tan lines just going all over the place. I mean, everywhere. It was either white or it was tan. And she was eating a McDonald's cheeseburger. And she had all this jewelry draped around her neck and her bracelets and rings, and she was Americanized.
She's about 20 pounds overweight, and she can't last in a 3-set match. And she has the prospect of being the best in her field, and she's not even trained to do it.
She was so honest and so oblivious and so naive, and I chuckled. But it was cute. I mean, it was really a cute impression that I had of her at that time.
Chris really had her number for a long time in their storied rivalry because she was fitter, and Chris knew that Martina had all kinds of game, and she was sort of a sleeping giant, and Chris knew it.
Before we would go even to play, she used to read my body language. And Chris played off that, which of course I didn't have an idea. If I was quiet in the locker room, she knew I was nervous, and so she was ready to play. But if I was, you know, sort of friendly and talkative, then she knew she was in trouble.
Although Navratilova lost to Evert in 15 of their first 18 matches, she admired, even liked her American nemesis. Together, they won the Wimbledon doubles title in 1976.
They were good friends to the point that as teenagers, they actually went on a double date together with Dino Martin and Desi Arnaz Jr. The four of them went to a drive-in movie together.
Martina's personality was that she wanted everyone to like her. She desperately wanted to be liked. And I can see her wanting Chrissy to like her. Chrissy is the queen of tennis.
Martina also knew that to be number one, she'd have to unseat her American friend. She did just that in 1978, defeating Evert for the first of back-to-back Wimbledon titles. But Navratilova was unable to stay on top. She needed a boss.
Florida State at 2 on ESPN.
Martina started out being called the Great Wide Hope. She had tremendous natural ability, but not a commitment to fitness. And Nancy Lieberman, once she got a hold of Martina, it was an entirely different ethic.
Nancy Lieberman, when she started helping me in the summer of '81, her biggest help was that she made me realize I was wasting my talent.
In my sincere, naive honesty, I said, I can't believe this is how you train. I mean, you're supposed to be really good and you really don't work at what you do.
Martina would start playing hoops with Nancy, and within a couple of minutes, she's sucking wind. Sucking, just coughing up her lungs.
In comes Nancy, the drill instructor, to be the bad cop, to be the 800-pound gorilla. It came naturally for her to come up and just browbeat Martina and say, outside, Teeny, we're going to work out.
She was, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. I was persistent. She was resisting persistence, and she's crying, and people are jogging by us looking at me like I was Tilla the Han.
However painful the regimen, Navratilova persevered in the belief that under Lieberman, she would get the toughness and endurance to regain and keep her #1 ranking.
Martina is driven by ego. It is a powerful, supremely consumptive ego. And if she decided that the way to make a mark on the history of the sport was to pursue conditioning, she was going to condition herself like no other woman athlete of her time.
Our philosophy was, on your worst day, I'd like you to be better than people on their best day. We did raise the standards and the fitness level of women's tennis or women's athletics because it took such a high-profile athlete like Martina to say to other people, it's not just good enough to play your sport, you have to do the other things to be a great athlete.
Because she jacked it up and then became as good as she was, then Chrissy had to up her condition. I mean, those two, without each other, those two would never have been as great as they were. They just kept raising the stakes on each other.
Nancy Lieberman did a lot with her as far as whipping her into shape. Her head was clear and she was more competitive and she was more focused than ever.
Nancy Lieberman absolutely drove her. Chrissy told me once that when Martina and Nancy had a really big argument before a big match, Chrissy knew she was dead. She said if they had a fight, it was because Nancy was pushing her and I knew Martina was just going to drown me.
The greatest respect that I had for Chris is that she was so mentally tough. And what I tried to get Martina to think about is when Martina played Chris, Martina wanted to win, but she didn't want to beat her love and love. She wanted to beat her maybe 6'4", 6'4", so she wouldn't hurt Chris's feelings. I tried to explain to Martina, when you play tennis against Chris, it's war for her and tennis for you. She wants to take your trophies, your money, your place in history.
A lot of drills I did were designed to beat Chris. I did imagine Chris as the enemy when I was practicing, when I was doing all those workouts. I could do it in practice, but I really couldn't do it when I played matches against her because she was too good a friend.
When I went on the court with her, I was playing my friend, Martina, and I knew her too well, and she knew me too well. But I couldn't handle it. You know, I was young, and I wanted to be number one, and friendship really took a second seat, I think, to my desire to be number one.
I'd clip things and post them in the bathroom, on the mirrors. So every time Martina brushed her teeth, hey, this is what Chris said about you. This is your best friend.
Lieberman's regular reminders to her student were so effective, they strained the friendship between Navratilova and Evert almost to the breaking point.
Martina walks by and doesn't look at her, doesn't talk to her, and Chris can't understand it. In 1982, I remember sitting in Wimbledon at a practice court, talking with Nancy in the stands while practice was going on. And all of a sudden, tennis balls come flying up into the stands. And I look down, and there's Chris whacking balls at Nancy.
As far as our relationship, it really went down the tubes there for a while because of Nancy's influence. At certain times, Martina and Nancy would look over at me and just start laughing. It's just kind of mean.
And that whole thing totally changed what Martina was able to do on the court, and it really helped her to become a champion. I mean, she would win matches in 40 minutes. She would decide championships under an hour.
Game, set, and match. Navratilova.
Beginning in June of 1982, Lieberman's creation ran off 156 straight weeks in the #1 spot. She reversed roles with Evert, beating her in 28 of their last 36 matches. Navratilova was not only living her American dream, she owned it. But the question remained, was America ready for the woman she had become?
ESPN is your home for the NFL postseason.
The playoffs, the best against the best.
Start your game days with Countdown to get all the insight and exclusive on-field access you need.
If you're a great player, this is where you show it.
SportsCenter brings you complete post-game coverage and instant
ESPN and ABC, presented by America's Navy.
As Martina Navratilova waited to be naturalized in 1981, she secretly explored territory beyond the accepted borders of social freedom.
In her wildest imaginings, she couldn't believe that people would mistreat her because she was a lesbian, because that was un-American in her mind.
And I really felt America was the land of opportunity, the land of dreams, the land of where you can be who you are and you don't have to make any apologies.
It was very hard for her to know her sexual orientation and to know that it was not popular, it was not time, it would cost her money, it would cost her friends, it would cost her appeal, and that she couldn't afford to be who she was.
There was this reporter that was hounding me, and I was feeling pressure to keep quiet. And once I got my citizenship, I said, I can't talk to you about it because it'll hurt the tour. The next day, the Daily News story is Navratilova admits her bisexuality will hurt the tour.
Adding fuel to the media blaze, Navratilova moved in with Lieberman, calling in to further question the nature of their relationship.
Now I'm in a relationship with Nancy Lieberman, who is in the closet in a big way, doesn't want anybody to know, so we sort of pretended that we were just friends, and for me that was a low point because I didn't want to do that, but I did it to protect Nancy.
In August of '81, she and Nancy Lieberman had a press conference in Dallas, Texas. And the purpose of the press conference was to say that Martina was no longer gay, that Nancy had come on as a trainer and a coach, and that she was going to, I believe the exact words were, lead her back to men. In this, she's failed spectacularly.
The relationship between Navratilova and Lieberman evolved into more than friendship before it ended in the mid-'80s.
Martina was somebody in my life that was very positive. And I mean, I can't really worry about what, how people characterized my relationship with her. I don't hide anything, I don't deny anything.
Despite microscopic public scrutiny, Navratilova, by admitting her sexual preference to the world, entered a second, perhaps even more liberating phase than the one that began with her defection from Czechoslovakia.
Being closeted is one of the debilitating experiences of any homosexual's life. There is nothing more difficult than living a lie. Once Martina didn't have to live a lie anymore, she was a new human being.
She went 128-1 over a period of about 17 months, and the 74-match winning streak she had in '84 succeeded a 54-match winning streak she had had in end of '83.
Paired with Pam Shriver, Navratilova dominated the doubles courts throughout the rest of the 1980s, winning 20 Grand Slam titles.
We just became this very intimidating tandem that people, when they walked out on the court, they weren't wondering whether or not they would win. They were wondering whether or not they would win games.
Despite equaling Everett's 18 Grand Slam singles titles, Navratilova couldn't usurp her friend's position as America's tennis princess.
Chrissy Everett, everybody loved her. To knock her off was an act of heresy in this country.
I can remember being at the U.S. Open in the early '80s, watching a match between Chris and Martina, where women with bracelets and nice hair and good clothing would be standing up in the stand saying, "Come on, Chris, we want to see a real woman win."
She's the picture of femininity, the picture of the American mother. Obviously, Martina doesn't represent motherhood.
The rivalry with Chris and I, everything was a contrast. I was big, muscular. He was Chris, very feminine, girl next door, dainty, painted fingernails, playing pretty tennis.
First ever tennis shoes by Converse.
You'll like playing in my shoes.
She played feminine tennis, and I played masculine tennis.
Because of the differences in Martina and Chris, and because of the length of the rivalry, and because it was so even as to who was going to win the matches, that's what kept the public involved. And I think that it brought in some people that just wanted to watch this match because they had heard about the rivalry.
They both fueled women's tennis. You had the left-handed Czech defector who was now bisexual versus the ice maiden next door, Chris Everett. And that was great theater.
It was probably one of the greatest rivalries in all of sports. You had the contrast in styles, personality-wise. You had the contrast in how they played.
Martina was fire. She'd cry after losing a match, throw her a racket. We couldn't put her on television right away because she was in somebody's arms with tears. And Chris would just walk in minutes after a match, wipe herself off with a towel, sit down, and give you 10 minutes on television. Win or lose.
Martina looked like she was a lot bigger than Chrissy. But the fact is, it galled Martina that people didn't know that they both wore a size 8 skirt.
I've been in her company a lot. By many standards, she's a quite attractive human being. The fact that she was perceived to be gay, where many of the other top female athletes were not, she's convinced that male editors went out of their way to find unflattering photographs of her.
If unflattering pictures hurt her pride, the public knowledge of her lifestyle cost her millions.
We knew about it, but when she finally decided to be upfront about it and come out because she wanted to live the life she wanted to live, it did hurt her. I mean, think of this woman who's won how many Grand Slam tournaments. What endorsements does she do? She missed out on making a lot of money. And I'm not talking about, for rackets or balls. She wasn't getting those mainstream endorsements, and that's how it hurt her.
It's quite clear that the corporate world really responded to her more as a lesbian than as a great athlete.
Gabriella Sabatini won one major, and here's Gabriella with a perfume, and she had her like a Barbie doll, a Gabriella doll, and all that kind of stuff that wasn't available to Martina. Madison Avenue didn't want to go near any of that. I think it's a continuing frustration for Martina that for so long people said she's the greatest player who ever lived. Well, why weren't they copying her? Shouldn't there be hundreds and hundreds of little girls trying to play like Martina? They all try to play like Chris. And Chrissy, corporate America loves Chrissy.
New Lipton iced tea mix. No sugar, no saccharin.
You'll love the goodness and the taste.
Chrissy will make money on herself for the rest of her life. That's not true of Martina.
Navratilova's lesbianism was not only frowned upon by corporate America, it may have denied her at least one off-court victory over her rival.
It was in late 1980 when the officers of the Women's Tennis Association were voting for the presidency. And Chris and I were both up for the presidency. And in our little speeches to the board of directors, I said, look, I'm with Rita Mae Brown. I'm in a relationship. If the press asks me, I'm not going to lie about it. So I don't want you guys to be surprised if this comes out. And Chris got the presidency for whatever reason. I'm told later that that was the biggest reason.
Even late in her career, her last couple of Wimbledons, they were still asking her, would you consider sort of putting a guy in your box so that it might help you financially?
Offering no apologies for her romantic choices, Navratilova's public persona seemed to grow stronger with time.
Martina was a person who hates being alone. She learned from a lot of people. Nancy Lieberman, the basketball player, was helping her with her conditioning. A lover named Sandra Haney, who'd been a marvelous golfer, helped instill a professional attitude in Martina, which she didn't have. Rita Mae Brown, the author, a lot of culture into her life. Judy Nelson was a great help to her.
We had a happy home. It wasn't about gender. It was about a commitment. It was about saying, I care about this person. I love this person. I want to spend my life with this person.
6 years into their relationship, Judy Nelson joined in one of Navratilova's greatest triumphs as the tennis icon won her 9th Wimbledon singles title in 1990.
I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching who hadn't heard the rumors wondered what the heck was going on. Was this her mother, her daughter, her aunt, her cousin? It shocked lots of people. People who knew what was going on were not shocked at all, and were sort of impressed by the boldness of it, by the courage of it.
But that courage was severely tested a year later when the couple parted. Suing Martina for half her assets gained while they were together, Nelson cited an agreement that had been recorded on tape.
You're not dumb, Martina. You're a smart lady. What did you think you were signing? What did you think you were agreeing to?
I never thought we would split up. I thought that was the relationship that was going to last the rest of my life. But I still didn't think that I would be giving away half of what I made.
Okay, I now pronounce you partners. Oh. Hey, Margaret. Goodbye.
There's no question the media played it big because it was a lesbian relationship.
If I'd been married to Jimmy Connors and was getting a divorce, none of that would have happened. They would not have made it into what it was. It would not have been an issue. But because we were two women, they thought they could do something with it.
You had to know, even if you didn't know her well, you had to understand that this is a woman going through turmoil. What a shame. Why can't we just look at her as the athlete? Why must we bring this baggage and then tell her to carry it?
The stars come out for a Friday night doubleheader on ESPN.
Anthony pulls it down.
Melo and the Knicks battle Eastern Conference rival Chicago. After a heated meeting in
In a career lined with milestones, perhaps Martina Navratilova's proudest achievement was winning a record 9 Wimbledon singles titles.
Navratilova was so good at Wimbledon that there was an element that didn't want her to win again.
What, 9 Wimbledons? Jeez, I mean, most people are lucky to play 9 Wimbledons, let alone win them.
If there was ever a surface that was tailor-made for a player, it was grass courts for Martina.
Well, it's our Masters, our Super Bowl, our World Series. That was always the one that I was aiming for. And of course, once I started playing on grass, I thought, this is the surface.
I had no opportunity to talk to her for 4 years. It was really tough time. And when she won, I still remember. I was full of her victory.
There is the queen of tennis at Wimbledon today.
In 1994, at 37, Martina shocked the tennis world by making it to center court once again in the hunt for a 10th singles title.
She comes to one last Wimbledon that she shouldn't be there, probably shouldn't even been in the tournament, certainly shouldn't be in the final, but she's there just by force of will.
She had transcended all the other labels by that time. And the only label that she had when she went on the center court for the final at Wimbledon was warrior.
When I won the semis, I'm like, okay, here I am, one more shot at it, and I gave it absolutely my best. I mean, I couldn't have done any better that day.
But Conchita Martinez, 15 years her junior, proved too tough for Navratilova, beating her 6-3 in the 3rd set.
Game, set, a match, Miss Martinez.
I was extremely disappointed that I didn't win that 10th one. I was really honestly thankful that I had that opportunity, that one more time.
She knew she wouldn't be back to center court as a singles player, and so she stopped. And for anybody else, I suppose it would be sacrilegious. But she grabbed a chunk of the sod, and that was part of her heart, that grass court at Wimbledon.
It gives you a tremendous sense of pride to own your own business.
We sell ourselves, we sell our name, we sell our image. We want that image to stick.
I'm always introducing myself. I'm always handing out cards.
Vistaprint allows business owners to more effectively and affordably promote their business.
The fact that we use Vistaprint to put our name out in the community.
All now.
Over 22 years, Martina Navratilova won 167 singles titles, more than any other player, man or woman. In 2000, at 43, she returned to the game, playing doubles in 3 majors. But with those powerful legs less than they were, she did no better than the quarterfinals.
In the time that she's been gone, the power in the women's game has gone up by 10 times. The players today are better than the players were yesterday. Maybe it's the equipment, maybe it's not. They're bigger, stronger, hit harder. The techniques for hitting are a little bit different than they were when they were playing.
Yet Navratilova has defied time. In May of 2002 in Madrid, she became the oldest player to ever win on the WTA circuit, claiming a doubles title at 45. In January of 2003, she won the Australian Open mixed doubles, and that summer, her mixed doubles championship at the All England Club tied Billie Jean King for most Wimbledon titles with 20.
Martina really genuinely loves the game, and for doubles, she still has the game. I think a lot of people had a wonderful time seeing a legend of the game who perhaps they never saw in person before.
When I retired from tennis, I thought if I don't hit another tennis ball the rest of my life, it's okay. I don't really need it. Well, I was wrong. When all is being said and done,
she won the Australian Open mixed doubles, And that summer, her mixed doubles championship at the All England Club tied Billie Jean King for most Wimbledon titles with 20.
Martina really genuinely loves the game, and for doubles, she still has the game. I think a lot of people had a wonderful time seeing a legend of the game who perhaps they never saw in person before.
When I retired from tennis, I thought if I don't hit another tennis ball the rest of my life, it's okay. I don't really need it. Well, I was wrong. When all is being said and done, I know that I have given a very good part of my soul to the game of tennis. But as in life, when you give, you receive. And I must say that tennis has given me soul, and that debt I can never repay. Thank you very much.
She understands from the get-go that she's here not to be an everyday run-of-the-mill personality. She's a band leader of some sort or another.
For Martina to be forthright and upfront and be open about her being a lesbian was tremendously important to let other people know that it was okay, that you can be a great athlete. Doesn't matter if you're a woman, a man, black, white, whatever it happens to be, you can play the game.
Why shouldn't you be able to say what you believe in and feel good about that? And I think she gives people the courage to speak up and say, here's my views, and you should be able to accept that in terms of at least listening to me and letting me speak my mind.
Martina Navratilova, the lesbian tennis player. They don't write Joe Montana, the heterosexual football player, do they?
You're told over and over again that this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. And sometimes you need somebody that's not born as an American to show you what this country means, what the promise of America is.
I left one country because I couldn't be who I was. And then I come to the United States, and now this country is telling me I can't be who I am. I don't feel as American as I would like to, because I'm not allowed to feel like an American. I can't fight for the country. I can't adopt a child. You know, they can throw me out of school, they can throw me out of work because I'm a lesbian. It's pretty frightening.
By the power of her ability, by the power of her personality, she's forced us to accept her. If she feels unaccepted, that's a comment on us.
Navratilova's fierce belief in personal freedom could not have been more accurately symbolized than in the Harley she received upon her retirement. Although she barely resembled that scared, chubby girl who fled an oppressed life 2 decades earlier, Martina was still a media presence, but with a decidedly less edgy quality.
What do I know about performance? Great horsepower! But what do we know? We're just girls.
She was just always ahead of the curve. I mean, she had the guts to defect. She had the guts to be who she was. I don't think Martina ever hid who she was. And now, finally, it's coming back to her, probably 20 years too late.
The values of the country have changed. I think there's much more openness about human sexuality. I mean, she's got an infectious laugh. She's a great speaker. She had a great history. I mean, what that woman accomplished coming out of her native country and becoming a tennis player, it's a life story that anybody would be proud of. And I think people are beginning to accept her for it.
When I think Martina, I think generosity of spirit and also always true to herself. I mean, she was always someone who battled through so many difficulties, so many hurdles, and I think she represented so much of what women's athletics became.
Martina wanted to be loved. You know, I think she really did, and certainly she is very much loved now. But I think a little bit more acceptance would have gone over pretty well with her.
I think honesty brings no regrets, but it certainly can make life more complicated. But that's the only way I know how to live.
In the end, she played not only to win, but to demonstrate and celebrate what and who she had become. The what is the best women's tennis player of all time. As for the who, a free individual who helped the nation face a controversial social reality. Martina Navratilova proved she is all things American. For SportsCentury, I'm Chris Fowler.
Special scene that at the Australian Open. There's